everyone, and welcome. First of all, I'm Janet Kine, the social media manager here at Udeti. So this is a live interview with our former visa officer, Yvette Bansal, who will be answering questions regarding B-1 and B-2 visas. Yvette Bansal is a former US visa officer. She has served at Embassy New Delhi and Consulate General Mumbai. She adjudicated over 40,000 non-immigrant and immigrant visas and has worked with applicants from every major visa category. Thank you, Yvette, for taking this time to join me on this interview.
Thanks, Janet. I'm excited to tell viewers a little bit more about B-1, B-2 visas and how to approach their U.S. visa interviews. This category of non-immigrant visas has a fairly high denial rate. In some countries, for example, it's about 1 in 4 applicants get denied for their B-1, B-2 visa. Not trying to scare you, but just giving the statistics so that you can be as prepared as possible. And that's the purpose of this webinar, is to prepare you and answer some of the most common questions. When I was a consular officer, I saw a lot of applicants make mistakes, the same mistakes, and having a lot of rote speeches or rehearsed speeches at the visa window. And I'd like to cover how to avoid those mistakes.
Great. So firstly, before we begin with the questions, Yvette, we will all like to know, since this is a Q&A regarding B-1, B-2 visas, right? So what is a B-1 and B-2 visa?
So a B-1, B-2 visa is a non-immigrant visa that allows you to travel to the United States for business or tourism purposes. Technically, a B-1 visa is used for business purposes, while a B-2 visa is used for tourism. But in almost all situations, a B-1, B-2 is given together. So when you have that visa foil, you'll see B-1, B-2. That means you can participate in some business activities, such as conferences, trainings, or tourism activities. So if you're seeking to go to Miami, or if you'd like to attend a conference, you'll apply for a B-1, B-2 visa. It has a maximum stay of 6 months in the United States, although unless you're an elderly parent of a US citizen, H-1B, or maybe a student, long stays can really raise red flags when you go to renew that visa. So be cautious, especially if you tell an officer, if you're going for short-term business travel, that you're only going for 1 to 2 weeks, and then the next time you end up going for 4 to 6 months, that's going to raise some red flags when you renew your visa. So be aware of that. The B-1, B-2 visa usually has a 10-year validity period. And I say usually because it can be limited by the officer, but it's generally not. Whether or not you get the visa will depend on how you explain your purpose of travel. If what you want to do is in line with the purpose of the B-1, B-2 visa, and how well you explain your financial situation and ties to the home country to the officer.
Whoa, thanks for the heads up, Yvette. So let us now proceed with the questions. The first question that mostly everyone would like to know is, how do we apply for this B-1, B-2 visa? Or maybe what are the steps involved in applying for this visa?
Sure. So how to apply and the requirements are going to vary by country. Generally speaking, all first-time B-1, B-2 applicants must fill out the DS-160 and attend their visa interview. The Department of State also has an interview waiver program where you do not need to attend the visa interview or if you're renewing your B-1, B-2 visa. So you go online to the State Department's website, you follow the simple process of filling out that DS-160, and it's pretty straightforward, but definitely always fill out your own DS-160 or have very good visibility on what is in there, because it's going to be something that the officer looks really closely at.
Okay, thank you. So my next question is, what are the common mistakes that we should apply when applying for a B-1, B-2 visa?
So there are a few common mistakes. First, for the B-1, B-2 travelers, their inability to describe the purpose of travel. So a lot of applicants struggle with clearly articulating their purpose of their business related trip, such as conferences, training, meetings. It can lead to a lot of confusion when the description of what you're going to do doesn't come with an agenda or is not very clear to the officer. So that's the number one thing, is lack of clarity on what you're actually going to be doing, a general timeline instead of a specific timeline. You can't say 1 to 3 weeks for a business meeting. You should know that. So the more specific and articulate you are, the better chance you're going to have. So again, have a specific time frame. Applicants may not have a definite time frame for their stay in the US, or their proposed time frame might not align logically to their stated purpose of travel. So that's a common mistake, meaning you say you want to go for a conference, but then you tell the officer you're staying for 1 month. You don't need to stay in the US for 1 month if you're just going for a conference. So make sure that you are making sense. So the second mistake is that they're not really connecting the dots for the officer, or the time frame and their purpose of travel are not making sense. So that's a common mistake. So providing generic answers, that's a third mistake. Offering vague or generic responses during the visa interview can raise doubts about the authenticity of your application and your honesty. So if there's a mismatch between the purpose of travel and the work profile that you do, the purpose of travel and business reasons should align. So when I worked in New Delhi and I had a coder that maybe only had 1 to 2 years of work experience, when they're telling me they're attending a specific conference, for me as an officer, that may not make sense if the conference is a very high level conference. So this could be that there is an authentic reason for them wanting to go, but they need to be aware that the officer is going to look at their profile and what they're going to do, and that should match up. A coder with 1 or 2 years of work experience doing high level meetings may not make sense. Now, it could be truthful, but you need to be aware that this is going to raise a red flag to the officer. So you need to be prepared. You need to have an agenda, and you need to explain why it's you giving that presentation. Maybe you have a technical skill, or you're an SME, or you went to an IIT. The officer may not know what an IIT is. If we're talking about India specifically, I mean, that's a top school. So you need to really spell it out for officers. They may not be as culturally aware as you think they are. So that's the fourth thing, a mismatch between your profile and what you intend to do there. So we're talking about using the B-1, B-2 for short-term business travel. So the fifth thing is insufficient ties to home country. So this can happen for travel as well, for leisure travel, as well as the business travel. You have to be able to put forth what ties you to your home country. This could be owning cars, owning immovable assets, having a large family. So make sure that you're expressing your level of ties whenever possible, and be aware that they do look at that. So common mistakes for leisure travelers specifically is a lack of a specific itinerary. So I would ask them, okay, so why are you going to the US? And they would say, oh, we might go to Niagara Falls and then Orlando and then Las Vegas. We'll be back in 2 weeks. And it's like, doesn't make sense. Give a good time frame. Have specific places that you want to go. Why? Because this is a really big investment. Also, there are cultural differences that you need to be aware of. In Latin American countries or Asian countries, maybe you're waiting until you get the visa to make your plans. But American culture individuals, they plan out everything to the detail. So you're dealing with an American officer. They want to see that level of attention to detail because they expect that, and they've grown up with that in their own culture. So make sure that you're aware of that. You may really just not know whether you want to go to Niagara Falls or Orlando, but just make sure you're as specific as possible. Try to make it as easy as possible for the officer to follow along. So the second thing is lack of truthfulness or vagueness. Don't be evasive in your questions. If an officer asks you a direct question, who do you know in the United States? So you should say, I know this person, or I have a distant relative that I don't know well. Don't be too vague. Applicants should be honest and transparent about their connections in the United States and anyone they know. If it's a distant relative that they don't speak with, just say that. I have a distant relative that I don't speak with, but don't avoid any questions because, again, that's going to make you look like you're not telling the truth. This may not be the case, but that's how it's presenting. Cultural differences. Mentioning reasons for travel that are culturally significant in your home country may not be easily understandable for the consular officer. So this could be you going to the United States for a housewarming. So the housewarming can include a pundit, for example. In Indian cultures, they like to bless a home. In American cultures, they don't understand why you would be spending thousands of dollars in order for you to do that. So baby showers, that could be another reason. So there are some cultural differences to be aware of. So if you really are going for something that maybe the officer doesn't understand, maybe mention the importance of that. It doesn't mean you have to pick a different reason, but definitely convince them of why this is specifically important. So another mistake is not giving clear financial provisions. I have known millionaires that have gotten rejected. And the reason is because they're too humble at the window. They don't explain their financial situation very well. So if you have really solid finances, now is not the time to be humble. You need to be able to support your travel expenses and demonstrate the extent of your finances and savings to the officer, because financial stability is a policy that the officer is going to look at in order to approve that B-1, B-2 visa. That was a lot.
Exactly. But then, those are very, those are like some very, very important points that we all should keep in mind in order to avoid those common mistakes. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So my next question, Yvette, is how can one prepare for this B-1, B-2 visa interview? Can you give us some tips on how to prepare for such interviews, like what we should wear or what we should say?
So dress neatly, limit jewelry. Officers unfortunately have some subconscious bias maybe, so certain jewelry may not work in your favor. Always look as nice and neat as possible, but don't go over the top. Also, don't be scared. Don't call the officer sir or ma'am. Definitely be on the same playing field as the officer, okay? You don't want to put yourself beneath the officer in any way. So many applicants are so scared at the visa window. I don't know why. Maybe it's the authority, maybe it's a really big decision, and they just get so scared. But you're going to be less scared if you're prepared. If you take some of these common mistakes and don't make them at the interview, you're going to definitely feel more prepared. And maybe it's not until you get in there that you realize, wow, maybe this isn't as easy as I thought. So don't think that it's easy to get a US visa. The officer is going to grill you. So don't be lackadaisical about preparation. It's really important to know that some countries it's 25 to 45% rejection rates. It's huge. And even people who are very well qualified get rejected because they're not able to present their case well at the window. So know that. Practice in front of a mirror. You have 1 to 2 minutes for the interview max. If you have a family member that's in the United States, make it easy. Bring a copy of their visa, especially if they're an H-1B. You can do a copy of their passport if they're an AMSIT. Make it as easy as possible to back up your story. Officers are generally not going to look at almost any documents, but if you have a copy of the visa of the F1 student you're visiting, the H-1B you're visiting, that is something they will look at, and they might check, is okay, yeah, they really do have a son there. They really do know an H-1B there. That is that person's sister. So that's going to offer you credibility, but almost other documents are not going to be looked at. So always expect the question, why are you going to the US? How long will you stay? And how will you pay for your travel? So if you get nothing else out of the presentation, practice those 3 questions because they will come at the interview. So.
Really great tips. So, like, from what I'm trying to understand is, we always need to prepare ourselves for the best. We need to have confidence in ourselves. We need to have a little faith, what I'm trying to say. And girls, remember, let's bling. So, that's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, so this next question, Yvette, is one very important one, I guess, for most people, actually. So what should a person do when, their B-1, B-2 visa gets denied?
So Udeti is a service that offers mock interview preparation. And I know this sounds like a plug, but let me tell you, if you've had a prior denial, you are in serious need of professional assistance if you expect to get the visa the second time. A second officer will review your case, they'll consider it, but if one officer has already denied you, it's an uphill battle. I'm not saying that to discourage you. You have to be doubly prepared. You have to take all the tips in this video, maybe book a consultation with me, and just be prepared. If it means that much to you, go to the United States because you need it. It's not a reflection on you. Your denial may not be a reflection on you at all. It could be that you got nervous, that you lacked confidence, you were giving vague answers. Many qualified applicants get rejected. And I know you're thinking like, then why is the system the way that it is? I don't know. It's flawed. And that, but know that if you had a prior refusal, it may not be a reflection on you at all, but you need to be doubly prepared the next time.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. I guess everyone now understands like what they should do thanks to you. Like, Yvette, getting a visa denied gets everyone paranoid and makes them lose hope. But your answer, man, I guess made a lot of people prepare themselves in such a way for their visas not to get denied. So thank you for that.
Sure.
So let's move on to the last, but not the least, like the last question of this interview. So the question is, how can a person renew their B-1, B-2 visa, Yvette? Like, what do they need to do? What are the procedures that they have to follow?
Generally, for renewing a B-1, B-2 visa, an applicant can opt for Dropbox or interview waiver. So when you're filling out that DS-160, it's going to tell you if you actually qualify for Dropbox based on a series of questions that the system is going to ask you. This is really key because if you are eligible for Dropbox for renewing, you don't have to attend the in-person interview, which is always preferable. You still have to go online and fill out the DS-160. The application will guide them through, as I said, to see if they're qualified to skip the interview or not. And each consulate and embassy has their own website. So please take a look at the rules, and they change often and they're not the same across the globe. So definitely keep on checking.
Thank you so very, very much, Yvette, for this interview. Like, your answer to every single question was so helpful. We've learned so much insightful information and tips regarding this B-1, B-2 visa. And I hope people that are watching this will put all of that into practice. So before we wrap things up, Yvette, do you have anything else to say to the viewers?
My last piece of advice is be positive like Janet. She's always positive, which is why we love her. And I want to wish everyone the best of luck. I know it's a scary process. Officers don't like to deny people, and that's for sure. And the more you prepare and you know what the officer wants, the better chances you have at getting the B-1, B-2 visa. And that's why I started this company, to offer mock interview preparation for those who are looking for an expert to help them. You can go online at udetivisa.com to book your consultation with me. All sessions are done over video, and I'm going to review your DS-160 to make sure it's pristine. If it's not something that you're looking for, you think it's too much hand-holding, that's okay. We have some free blogs, some free videos on YouTube, Instagram. We're a startup, so definitely like our pages, and we'll continue to give you free content whenever possible. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So I guess this concludes our interview, Yvette. And to everyone who's watching this, if you have any other queries, any questions regarding B-1, B-2 visas, you can visit our website, udetivisa.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And you can by typing Udeti Visa. So remember, everyone, always have faith in yourself, always be prepared, be confident in yourself. And remember, girls, once again, let's blink. Thank you, everyone. Take care.